Airport staff discovers a crying FBI agent. Then they hear, "Don't let him board." Nathan Brooks had always had one big dream since childhood. He wanted to become an FBI agent. While other kids dreamed of becoming astronauts or football stars, Nathan was fascinated by the idea of joining an elite unit dedicated to justice. After finishing high school, he pursued a degree in criminal justice and worked tirelessly on his physical fitness. But amidst all his professional ambitions, there was one moment in his life that changed everything: the day he met Haley. It was a scorching summer day in Jackson, Mississippi, when Nathan and Haley crossed paths for the first time. They both worked at a small cafe, he as a security guard, she as a barista. From their very first conversations, it was clear that they shared a special connection. Nathan was captivated by Haley's joy for life, her passion for art, and her ability to always find the good in every moment. They became inseparable, spending every free moment together, and soon realized that they were meant for each other. 2 years later, on a warm spring evening, Nathan got down on one knee and proposed, and Haley, overjoyed, said yes. Their life seemed perfect. After their wedding in 2015, they enjoyed every moment together, traveling, laughing, and making future plans. But their happiness reached an even greater height when, one morning, Haley stood in front of him with tears in her eyes, holding a tiny pair of baby shoes. "Nathan, we're having a baby." The joy on his face was indescribable. For weeks they imagined what their child would be like, what name they would choose, and what adventures awaited them. They finally decided on the name Miley, a blend of both of their names. Everything seemed perfect. But then came the news that changed everything. Just 2 months before Miley's birth, Nathan received a life-changing call from the FBI. He had been accepted. His training would begin in just a few weeks in Dallas. It was the moment he had worked his entire life for. But it also meant leaving Haley alone in the final months of her pregnancy. She tried to stay strong, smiling and telling him they would make it work. But deep in his heart, Nathan knew it was the hardest decision he would ever have to make. And he had no idea how dramatic the next few weeks would become. The farewell was harder than Nathan had ever imagined. Haley tried to smile bravely, but her eyes revealed how much fear she felt about spending the final weeks of her pregnancy alone. "I can do this," she said with a trembling voice as he picked up his luggage. "You have to follow your dream." Nathan held her tightly, kissed her belly gently, and promised, "I will be there, Haley. I won't leave you alone." But as he boarded the plane to Dallas, an unsettling feeling crept over him, as if fate had different plans. The FBI training was even tougher than he had anticipated. Grueling physical and mental tests pushed him to his limits, and the strict rules allowed little time for personal calls. But no matter how exhausted he was, he called Haley whenever he had a spare moment. She tried to hide her worries, but Nathan could hear it in her voice. She felt alone. Then came the horrifying news. During a routine checkup, doctors discovered that her blood pressure was dangerously high. The diagnosis, preeclampsia. Haley's life and their unborn babies was in grave danger. A wave of panic surged through Nathan. He knew he couldn't afford to wait another second. He sprinted to his instructor, explaining the situation with urgency. After a quick discussion, he was granted permission to leave immediately. But there was a problem. There were no direct flights to Jackson. He had to first fly to Dallas and then catch a connecting flight. Time was his greatest enemy. While Haley was rushed to the hospital in excruciating pain, Nathan was stuck in an airplane that felt painfully slow. All he could do was pray that he would make it in time. But when he landed in Dallas, his worst nightmare came true. His connecting flight was delayed, and Haley was already in labor. Nathan sprinted through Dallas Airport, his heart pounding with panic. Every glance at his phone made his fear grow. The messages from Haley's mother became more urgent. "She's in the delivery room, Nathan. It's happening." He knew time was running out. Nathan rushed to the gate, only to hear the devastating news. His connecting flight was delayed by 2 hours. A wave of desperation crashed over him. His wife was fighting for her life, and he was hundreds of miles away, trapped in a crowded terminal. He tried to calm himself and dialed Haley's number. When she picked up, she could barely speak. Her voice was weak, and in the background he could hear the monotonous beeping of medical machines. "Nathan, I'm sorry," she whispered. Tears welled up in his eyes. He wanted to encourage her, tell her to stay strong, but his voice failed him. Then he heard another voice, her grandmother, speaking firmly. "Wait, I have an idea." Seconds later, he received a video message. She had discreetly placed her phone in the delivery room, allowing him to witness the birth. Nathan stared at his screen. He was still at the airport, but suddenly it felt like he was there. He saw Haley's exhausted face, heard the voices of the doctors. Then, a cry, a first breath. His daughter was born. Nathan broke down in tears right there in the middle of the terminal, surrounded by strangers. He felt a hand on his shoulder, a concerned airport worker who had been watching everything unfold. Then, suddenly, an urgent voice shouted from his phone, "Do not let this man board that flight." Nathan froze. What did that mean? Nathan froze as he heard the words from his phone. "Do not let this man board that flight." For a moment he thought it was a mistake, but then he heard the excited voice of the doctor. "Your daughter is here. She is healthy." His legs gave out and he collapsed onto one of the waiting benches. Tears streamed uncontrollably down his face. The surrounding passengers who had overheard the conversation were holding their breath. Some smiled warmly, others wiped their eyes. The airport staff, who had previously urged him to board the plane, now stood frozen. They suddenly understood. This was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Nathan knew he couldn't physically be in the hospital, but thanks to the video call, he had been there. He watched as the doctors gently placed the tiny baby into Haley's arms. He saw his wife smile, exhausted but radiant with joy. Overwhelmed with emotion, he whispered over and over, "I'm here. I'm with you." Then, as if a new energy surged through him, he jumped up. He still had one last mission. He had to get on that plane. He had to go home. With renewed determination, he rushed to the gate. This time, no one stopped him. The airport staff, now with tears in their eyes, simply nodded at him. "Go to your family." 2 hours later, Nathan landed in Jackson. He raced through the airport, jumped into the first taxi he could find, and sped toward the hospital. As he burst into the hospital room, his heart stopped for a moment. There she was, his daughter, a tiny bundle in Haley's arms. When she saw him, she smiled weakly and gently handed him the baby. For the first time, Nathan held his daughter in his arms. She was perfect. The moment was silent, but filled with more meaning than words could ever express. He hadn't made it to the delivery room in time, but he was here now. And that was all that mattered. Nathan Brooks had imagined his first meeting with his daughter differently, but fate had its own plan. Despite every obstacle, every delayed flight, and the race against time, he had still shared this moment with his family. His story reminds us that true love and determination can overcome any distance. Did this emotional story touch your heart? Leave a like and share it with your friends. What would you have done in Nathan's situation? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.